Hi there, it's Rob Sayer from Onstage Lighting. Welcome to another of our AutoCAD for Theatre tutorials. In this tutorial we're going to look at some basics of adding dimensions. In this instance it's to add dimensions in model space as we go along, to kind of check dimensions as you draw and stuff. Quite often I encourage people to take dimensions and put them on the drawing as they go along to check they haven't made any major errors, particularly if you're measuring between objects that then can magnify particular problems you've had earlier on in the drawing. So what we're going to try and do is we want to get a little thing like this as a dimension that just draws between these 2 points here. There's adding dimensions in model space and also in other parts of AutoCAD is a bit of a minefield, and we're not going to go into too much detail today. What we're just going to do is we're going to try and get a dimension that displays so we can use it. Okay, so in order to add a dimension, what we can do is we can either go to our main toolbox and we can go to annotation, and we can find dimension tools in annotation. So we can find, for instance, a linear dimension here, B1, or you can do a similar thing by typing in the command. What I'm just going to do, I'm just going to hit that linear dimension. And then the first thing I'm going to do is click at the first point I want to measure at, and then click at the second point. And then I need to move my mouse and to actually drag the dimension out. Now already you can see there's an issue with this particular dimension because it's great but it's tiny. Now maybe we don't want that, maybe we want it so we can see it a bit better. There's loads of reasons for this, but basically just for this particular tutorial what we're going to do is we're just going to make the text bigger on that dimension so we can see it. So what we need to do is we need to actually select the dimension itself and then look down here in the, it says rotated dimension. Normally your properties inspector would maybe have just the essentials showing, but what we're going to do is expand all of the properties and have a bit of a mess around with them. There's different parts to this, the lines and arrows. Obviously we can change the size of the arrows, so that would be a good start, wouldn't it? I don't know if you can see that now, we've actually made those arrows bigger. Let's make them even bigger. You can see large arrows there. Going down the list, we can also find a thing called text. At the moment the text height is set to 2.5. Now if we make that 25, you can see it's a much bigger piece of text. We can also go further down, and there's also a thing here with decimal separator. It currently is set to comma. In the UK we use a dot. So you can see how you can change this dimension. There's lots of other parts to dimensioning in AutoCAD, particularly a thing called annotative scales. So that's just up here, annotative scaling. There's a checkbox here that gives you other options, and it's a whole other series of tutorials on its own. But basically, in order to put a dimension on your model space so you can check your drawing, that's the way to do it. If you want to change the dimension style for a number of dimensions, the best thing to do is to actually set up the dimension style itself so that every time you draw a dimension you get the same thing and you get the scale you want. So in order to do that we need to go to the dimension style window, and you can see I've just started typing dim STY in there, and that's given me the shortcut to there. Basically what it is here's in this particular drawing there's different dimensions and different things. Now you can add and copy particular styles and everything else. All we're going to do is we're going to look at inside this ISO 25 to see if we can make some changes. What's not totally obvious on the Mac is that you need to drop down the little cog at the bottom of the list, and then you need to go to modify. Then you're kind of overwhelmed by options here to deal with stuff, including to do with text and stuff like that, and fit. Now if we're using annotated dimensions, there's a scale in here. It's all quite complex, but basically if you want to change your base size of your text, so maybe in this instance I'm just going to set it to 10, and then I'm going to close it, and then the next time I do a dimension I get some decent sized text in there. As I say, it's all quite complex, but you've got a way of changing individual dimensions by selecting on the dimension and then changing it in the properties inspector, and then going to dim style, which is how you edit the long-term styles that you're working with on the particular dimensions you're working with at the time. Hope that's been useful. I'll see you soon.